So this is yet another day where I had to film inside because it is pouring here in Iceland. But anyways, guys, today, this is not long after the Community Shield final that we lost. I wanted to share some words from Virgil, but first I wanted to ask you, how many more signings do you think we'll need this summer? What positions do you think we still need to go for? It's obviously, we're almost mid-August now, so there's not much time left in the window. I just calculated before, if Kostas, who's very likely to leave, and it looks like Forest are very interested. If Kostas, Harvey, and Chiesa leave, and there's a very good chance that all three, Kostas is mostly linked with Forest, Harvey to RB Leipzig, and then Chiesa to Atalanta. If those three leave, that would be 10 senior players leaving the clubs, or 10 important players leaving the club this summer, which just shows how much kind of movement there's been within our team, already a Premier League winning team. But I want to share this quote. Virgil said post-match, well, we just lost Darwin. He went to Saudi, and we lost Lucho, obviously went to Bayern. I think there's always room for an attacker in order to strengthen us. So let's see what the window brings in terms of the balance of the team. The balance of the team. Now, when I heard that, I was a bit surprised to hear him say a striker, but I bet he means more so a forward, an attacker. Because, for example, when we saw Ekitike, in that Community Shield final, I thought he really stood out in the middle of the pitch. Though he just looked so good on the ball, fluid. He looked just natural. He looked like he knew exactly what he was doing. And obviously, it's the very start of his Liverpool career. But I feel like defensively, we need to shore things up. Defensively, we need to shore things up. Definitely get another center back, that's for sure. Because obviously, Kwanzaa left. Gomez isn't fit, and now the season has begun. So we can't really have too much confidence there. So definitely a center back. And then from an attacking point of view, it seems like we really are just going to push for Alexander Isak because we see him as being this real outstanding talent that we're willing to go all out for him. I wonder what that's going to mean for Ekitike. Does that mean he's going to play on the left? Because again, based on what we saw in the Community Shield final, Ugo Ekitike looks way too good of a player to just be on the bench for the big games, So it seems like our front three would have to be then, if we do get Isak over the line, Mohamed Salah, Alexander Isak, and Ugo Ekitike on the left. But what's for sure is something that I do think, even if people can say, oh, we were so dependent on Mohamed Salah last season, this and that, I still think us having 6 attackers, and I know Chiesa didn't play a lot, but still, we had 6 attackers. The firepower that we had there is something that was significant that other teams lacked, especially when I looked at City and you looked at Arsenal, So that gave us a significant advantage. And, since now like I said, Chiesa could potentially leave. There's just been so much movement. We unfortunately lost Jota and then Darwin and Lucho. That's 4 of our 6 attackers that could be moving on this summer. And I just wonder, do we need kind of, because based on that game in the Community Shield, we didn't bring on really any attackers. All of us in the building, when we were doing the watch along, were saying, please bring on Rio. But the fact that Slot didn't bring on Rio shows that he didn't think he was quite ready in that moment in time. I'm not so sure. But what we do know is in that second half, we didn't pose any attacking threat. No real attacking threat. So we have to, that's where I'm kind of curious. Where do you think we really need to strengthen? If let's say we could only make 2 more signings, where would you go? Because me personally, I would say a center back first and foremost, without a shadow of a doubt, because we would be in crisis mode if either Virgil or Ibu got injured. And then I would say an attacker, but maybe a versatile attacker, even though it seems like Slot does seem Jeremy Frimpong. He said in a press conference he sees him as someone who could potentially fill in for Mohamed Salah on the right wing during AFCON. So maybe he sees him also. And we saw, in his first game, against Palace, he did score, to be fair. So he shows he has that attacking threat. And his GA for Leverkusen has actually been unbelievable the last 2 seasons. So he's actually quite decisive in the final third. But I don't quite count him as an attacker, So like I said, if Chiesa leaves, that would be 4 attackers that we had last season that are no longer there. I know we brought Ekitike in, but clearly we need to bring someone else in. But maybe, Slot sees Alexander Isak as someone who can fill in the striker position and the left wing position, So we'll have to wait and see on that. But yeah, I think definitely center back and an attacker. And what I just wonder too is, like, when Gravenberch isn't in the side, he's someone that clearly we missed in that Community Shield final against Crystal Palace. Does he really trust Endo to start? I wonder about that too, because then why didn't he start him in the Community Shield? You know what I mean? Just because we clearly needed a defensive mid. We needed someone to kind of break up the play, especially with how Crystal Palace, we knew they were going to set up just sitting deep and then looking to counterattack and stuff like that. So how much does he trust Endo is something I wonder too, because if Gravenberch is out, and for example, for our first game of the season, Gravenberch is suspended against Bournemouth. So in the games where he's not there, how are we kind of going to replace him is something I'm curious about too. Um, but yeah, I think if we can't get Alexander Isak though, it seems like we're going to look for a top winger who's versatile. That's where I think we're going to invest the money. So either potentially a Bradley Barcola from PSG, or maybe we're going to go for Rodrigo, even though he's been linked with City. But that's something to keep an eye on. I definitely think now we will sign an attacker as well. I mean, just the fact that we sold, like I said, Darwin and Lucho, that's significant money, I think, to bring in an attacker. And then defensive side of things, Kwanzaa, we sold him for decent money too. We got to bring in a center back too. So I definitely think, as crazy as it sounds, because we've already had a big summer in terms of the 4 major players we brought in, are all potentially starters. And we saw that. All 4 of them did well in that Community Shield final. You know, Kirkez, Frimpong, Wirtz, Ekitike, they all shined. And so those were significant signings, but I still think we need 2 more significant signings minimum based off of what we saw. And I do hear some people saying, is this just too much of a shakeup? Because we were a Premier League winning team, but I do think a lot of the players we're discussing are ones that we needed to move on. As in, like, there needs to be a bit of an evolution, and Slot, it needs to start being his team, and he's going to need some time with that, you know, because a lot of these players are adjusting to his style of play, to the country, to everything, and we're going to need to be a bit patient, you know, but you always kind of need to evolve, and you need to be a bit harsh sometimes in certain places, because, for example, I think Kostas would have been happy to fight for his place, but look at how now we have 3 senior left backs, you know, I don't think there's space for him, you know, especially with the standards right now, But yeah, guys, do let me know what are you thinking for rest of the summer signings. This could be another big week in terms of movement. It looks like either we're going for an experienced Premier League center back like a Gehi, or a young player with tons of talent and bags of potential like Giovanni Leoni from Parma. So I think we'll go either one of those directions for a center back. And then for an attacker, like I said, we're going to keep pushing for Isak. And if it's not Isak, it's looking like it's going to be a top winger. And I think either a Bradley Barcola or Rodrigo. But yeah, guys, let me know how you're feeling. You know, now that we've had some time to reflect after seeing our proper team against Crystal Palace, how you're feeling for the rest of the window. And yeah, let's share our thoughts. And as always, thank you for the support, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Ciao, guys.